Hello, everybody. I'm Steph Morrison from the Canadian Schoolhouse, and today I am quite honored to be sitting here with, not side by side, but side by side on screen, so it's almost as good, with Veronica Slater from Slater Consulting. And we had a little talk a couple of weeks ago, and I really got to know about all she's doing, and more importantly, what she can do for our families, for our students, as well as our adults and everything. She actually works with every age level. So we're going to talk with Veronica, and she's going to just share all kinds of great stuff about learning about your kids' gifts and talents, and being able to not only just know as a parent how to educate them and how to deal with them on every level, but then also how they can know themselves better, which just makes it so much easier in every area of your life when you're kind of understanding how your brain works a bit. So welcome, Veronica, and welcome to our live here today.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So first off, let's do just a little bit of a Latin lesson. I loved hearing about the MO. So this has to do with the work you do as a Kolbe consultant. And so tell us what that MO stands for and how that relates to the workings of our brain, and especially as students learning and behaving and all that kind of stuff.
So it's an acronym for modus operandi, a fancy Latin word that literally means mode of operation or method of operation. And what Kolbe is, it's a validated method that it allows us to understand what it is, that the pattern of behaviors that we use when we are motivated to accomplish a task and we are free to be ourselves. So if we can just kind of, now that we know what that is, then I'd like to explain to it from the perspective of our brain. So when we think of, we're forever talking about our affective side of the brain and also the cognitive side of the brain. And so, when we think of affective, we think of everything that has to do with our desires, our tastes, our interests, our emotions, our feelings. And that is also, that part of the brain is where our motivation lives. So that's really important. The other, side of the brain we commonly talk about is the cognitive, and that is everything that has to do with our skills, our knowledge, the education we receive, all the things that we know. It's also where our IQ lives. So apart from the IQ, which is given by our parents, it is a genetic gift that we receive. Both the affective and the cognitive side of the brain are forever evolving, because we are continuously growing. We are continuously changing our desires and our tastes and our interests, but we're also always learning more and more. So we accumulate more and more skills. What we are going to be talking about, and what I'm really interested and passionate about, is the third part of the brain, and that is where conation lives. That is where our MO lives, and that is our drive. That is our innate ability to problem solve. We literally come wired a certain way. And interestingly, it isn't a part of our brain that is dictated by genetics. So our parents don't give us that. It isn't something that is associated to our gender. It isn't anything that has to do with our social or economical background, whether they're rich or poor. Every single being comes with an MO. So those are instincts. And it kind of makes sense when you think that, we are literally wired to survive. And so, these, when we understand our instincts, those are our gifts, our talents, our natural strengths. Those are the things we can forever count on that never, ever change. So does that explain the MO? That is what we're looking at. We will be able to crack this holy grail of behavior, and through Kolbe understand what the pattern of behavior that we use is. And so, therefore, what our natural strengths are, what our instincts are, what are these gifts, so that we can always count on them and use them purposefully. That's the word I'm trying to say.
Uh-huh. And as you talk about now, one thing I'd never known before we talked before is that a cognitive. Am I saying that right? The cognitive part of the brain, right? Like we've got the cognitive, like CODNIT, right? Part of the brain, and that I was definitely more familiar with. But this cognitive is something that really gives us more uniqueness, or say like our personality. But one thing that just kind of comes to mind is what you're kind of doing with Kolbe assessments, and what that part of the brain isn't necessarily just like going and getting a personality quiz, right? Like it's not, because I'm quite familiar with those and I've taken several different ones myself, but it's a little bit different than that, right? Am I understanding that right? That it's not really like, it's not the same kind of assessment like a personality quiz, but I mean, it deals with that part.
Well, personality is more linked to your affective side of the brain. When we look at all three aspects of the brain, including your conation, and if we want to look at the roots of words like conation, con means action. So what we look at with the Kolbe method is how we move into action, is how we do things. And so it is literally a pattern of behaviors that we use again and again when we are free to be ourselves. So it's really a combination. When you look at our brain, it's a combination. You need motivation to move into action. Then you need to engage your natural abilities, your action modes that I will talk to you about in a second. And then it's your cognitive that kicks in. So it's a linear process that we engage continuously. The fascinating thing about our gifts, our natural instincts, is that when we go against them day in and day out, we go against our brain, and it's extremely stressful and it is depleting. As opposed to when we are able to just glide and just soar using our abilities. We see it in our children. A lot of them have really struggled in school, in certain classrooms, for example. And then when they're home, they have this freedom to be themselves. And a lot of the time, we just literally see them soar. In order to understand the results, we don't call any of the Kolbe assessments, no matter for what age group we do them, we don't call them a test. They're not a test because there's no way you can fail it. So the Kolbe method, and this is probably what I love most about it, is that everyone is perfect the way they are. The results are perfect. We all have the same cognitive ability to get from A to B. We just use different ways to getting there. So I'm going to show you what an index A, so this is an adult result, what it looks like. So you see 4 bars, and these are the four action modes that we engage in. And it is how we engage these 4 action modes, the combination of that continuous pattern that makes our superpowers. And this is what I teach kids. I explain to them how to understand these patterns and how to own them so that they always know what they can count on. And also so that they can advocate for themselves. It's a very powerful, validating, positive tool to have. And I don't know if that answered your question, but did it clarify some of it? So
it gave me a little bit new information as well.
Right. So the 3 parts of the brain together is what makes us unique. It's really what defines us. So the personality aspect, the cognitive aspect are forever growing and evolving, but the conation part of the brain, or what it is that we bring, our MO, is really there from the beginning of our lives and does not change throughout our lives. That's what makes us unique.
I like that term that you use, superpower, mainly because it really relates to our household. We're such like a big super big, the Marvel comics and the X-Men, and like we're all pretty into it. And I think maybe my boys and my husband are into it for a different reason. But what I really love about that, the whole like superhero, fiction stories is that they do each, well, I like the general, fight between good and evil, but that they each do have their superpowers and some of them actually have to work on them, right? It's not just that they have this special power that they learn about and then they know how to, right? Some of the movies and shows are really they're developing those superpowers, and some of them don't know about it until a certain time. And I actually really relate that to my boys, and I've got a 10 and a 13-year-old, and I think a lot of you other parents can really relate to that as well, that as much as your children can be alike because they're somewhat raised the same way, in the same household with lots of the same values, God has really made each of us, the parents, the kids, each of us very uniquely and wonderfully. And I wish, that's jumping up on my head, and I wish I could say what that scripture is, but I know somewhere in the Bible it's talking about how we're all wonderfully and uniquely made, and God made us that way for a reason, and a lot for that reason because of what he's created us to do. And I think when we discover that, so when my boys especially, not just because as a parent, I do have I have a certain MO too, I guess.
Yeah. And we all carry
right, and that
right? We all think that our way of doing is better to a certain extent.
Uh-huh.
I think it's just natural.
Yes,
like,
I
we want our kids to do like us, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, and it's nice to be able to get that that idea of how they're different, because I know their brain works differently. Like, in fact, being the only woman in my household, I'm well aware how all the males in my household, their brain works differently, and in a lot of respects it works the same. So there is a little bit of similarities, like even with gender we can say that, oh yeah, boys are a lot more like this and girls are a lot more like this, but I really enjoy hearing how that's how stereotyping actually isn't it's never beneficial, but I think with understanding how our kids are, and sometimes I fall into this trap too of telling one of my boys how, and because they really have different strengths, like even just when we talk about just in subjects, right? One is that the younger one, the 10-year-old, is like, oh, he picked up reading so quickly and he is such a fluent reader. He reads more fluently, certainly even more fluently than my husband, and he's just like great at just his 10 years of age, and he has been for a while. And yet my 13-year-old is still at a and I'm not going to say that he's struggling, but he's just not as advanced in that yet. And I have no doubt that he'll read as fluently as he needs to, or more fluently as time goes on, but that's certainly not a strong strength. So we can, I guess I want to point out too that we can identify those things as homeschooling parents, as parents that are with our kids all the time. We can sometimes easily identify those things, like, oh yeah, his strength is in math and his strength is in reading, and we can identify that pretty easily. But some of this other stuff of what is it that motivates, and I'm going to say I'm struggling with that right now. What is it that motivates my boys, and especially my older one? And I think only because he's older, only because he's 13 and he's getting into that just where he is maturing as a human being. He's at a stage where I think he needs to know himself a little bit better and be able to just really be able to understand how that brain works of his, because I can't relate to it as easily.
Well,
I can learn, and I am learning, but
right. I think the reason we don't relate to these specifics is because we're continuously kind of shooting arrows in the dark, hoping to hit the eyeball and or the bullseye. Sorry, it just doesn't work that way. This is what Kolbe does. Is it actually tells you exactly this is how your child. This is the MO. And these are all the strategies that they benefit from. This is how he's more likely, or she is more likely to learn. Perhaps, their RMOs are a lot more verbal than others. And so it is important to create opportunities. Kolbe is not a free pass for anything. Life is life, and we all need to adapt, and we all need to, even every day, go a little bit against our grain, right? Like, that's just life. But when you understand what makes you shine and how you can reduce some of that pressure, days are a lot better. They're a lot less frustrating. I think that when I look at families and the synergy, the cognitive synergy that exists, we're able to remove a lot of the frustration that comes from, why is he doing that? Like, why is it so deliberate? When you understand how the child moves, or your partner or yourself, we all move into action, we're able to reduce a lot of that emotional tension that comes from these interactions, when we're not understanding why people keep doing things the same way. Kids will comply to a certain extent. They will accommodate more or less when they have to. But if you keep putting them into situations that don't allow them to be themselves, it's the same with adults in jobs that are not suited to their natural abilities. You just deplete people's energy, and then what happens is it just triggers all kinds of emotional, cognitive as well, stress. And so, it does have a real physical effect when we're not able to be ourselves, and when we're not celebrated. It's kind of nice, as a family, to know for sure who you can count on for certain things. It's nice to allow others to shine in their most raw, natural way. And I know Kolbe has changed my life on a personal level, as an individual, but also as a mom, as a partner. And I love to see how it empowers young kids. So yeah, it's a game changer, especially for homeschooling.
Yeah, getting that opportunity. And I think most of us that choose to homeschool, and even at this time when maybe the choice to homeschool was actually a little bit more forced, maybe not the what came to mind at all, even before the public school system was just very, very different and made it a lot more difficult for kids to be in. But now I know a lot of parents have chosen to homeschool, and they can't see sending their kids back. Now there are other parents too, and I want you other homeschoolers to know that are watching, that even if you're homeschooling and you're struggling, I've totally been there as well. I've struggled a lot, and I've done a little bit of this trial and error, especially as far as curriculum and learning, and trying to find what works for my boys, trying to find what works for my lifestyle, because I do work part-time. Sometimes some weeks it feels like full-time, but I do work part-time from home. And it's really, I don't really have a lot of time for teaching. And I know that as my boys have gotten older and I just understand them more, that it actually makes some of this teaching part, and not so much just my personal knowledge teaching them, but me identifying what curriculum actually works better for them. And some of that I've done through trial and error. And actually, as my kids get older, right, they can, when they really know themselves more, I'm there still as the guide and the parent and the one raising them, but they can really determine what kind of interests they truly have, how they can really start to be guiding their education. And one of the things I really I think are so important, and I think that a lot of homeschooling parents, if not all, really want to instill a love of learning, and also to really be able to grasp those teachable moments. And I know we've had a bit of content we put out, not that I've written, but that I've read through as we're getting it published, and we're really trying to focus on those teachable moments and not making it because being able to grasp the moments of the day and teach is a really wonderful thing, and it can be almost more, you can retain that more, our kids can retain that more as they have it really relate to their real life. And so I'm especially excited to hear how that, you know, and even how I can relate other ways of teaching, other ways of even the curriculum, and how that can actually relate to their way of thinking and doing.
So just so when you see that you're engaging them the right way and they're motivated and they're going for it, it's because they're engaging all three parts of their brain, and that is what causes
Yes, instead of just
that's where you see that purpose. First, I won't be able to say that word today, it appears, but okay, so purposeful action, right? That's when you see them soar, right? And so it's because the three parts of the brain are engaged, and they're doing exactly what they're meant to be doing. So it is incredibly gratifying to see that. And when kids, I believe, experience that, they're then able to take this to, you know, systems that are more organized, or that are bigger, I would say, not more organized, but bigger than our home setting. And then they're able to advocate for themselves. They're not talking, when they talk to a professor or a teacher, they're no longer talking about, or they don't come across as talking of whims or preferences. They're actually talking of their needs. And so we teach our kids to explain what their needs are. We have kids that love information and can't have enough. And when the teacher doesn't have that innate, you know, instinct to give a ton of information, you have kids that are left with anxiety because they need more in order to move forward. And so that's just a simple example to say, we explain to them, like, how do you address that? Maybe, you know, you can write all your questions down and then, you know, send an email in, or go see the person and say, you know, I'm a person that needs a lot of information. These are the questions I have. Can you help me answer them? Or can you direct me so that I can go look for them? So that alone, like when the kid is aware that the stress or the anxiety that they're feeling is caused by this cognitive tension between them and their professor, then you remove the emotional load that they carry, and you empower them by giving them strategies that actually work. And that help them grow. And that, you know, that same kid might be the kid that, you know, shows up during teamwork and says, you know, I'm really good at research. I can totally come up with a list of priorities for our team. You know, it's empowering to be able to say that and to do that. So those are the kids, you know, that that get their student aptitude quizzes anywhere from, I would say, in order to take this quiz, this particular one that I'm talking about right now is they need a grade 4 reading level, and it goes all the way to university level, so young adults. And prior to that, if anyone is interested in learning how to obtain or how to understand the child's MO, there is something called Brainiac, and it's basically a kit of toys that the children play with. It's videotaped, it's analyzed by top behaviorists in Arizona, and then my work is to interpret the results with the parents. I can show you what it looks like. This is a kit that goes home, and the kids get to keep it and they play with it. Videotape that it informs us of how they do things. An important thing to note also is that we're able to use this for children that are nonverbal, or actually adults as well that are nonverbal, and it still gives us their MO, their results, to facilitate their learning and their life in general. And then there's the last index is the one that is for adults, that and it's called an index, a Kolbe A. And so you see, it's not a test, it's an index, because you can't get anything wrong on that assessment. The last thing that I want
Uh-huh.
to mention, because it could also be of interest to your community, is that Kolbe offers a program called UpGig. And UpGig is a really cool program that gives career results options for children, and they can, teens can take it. So it's really cool because unlike the programs that are solely based on interest, the UpGig marries interest with natural ways of doing, so aptitudes, and so it produces an incredible amount of possibilities for kids. It doesn't mean that they're gonna, they have to stick to what the program suggests, but it's tremendous in terms of opportunities. It tells them you can do so much with your life. It gives them 10 top careers that they are magnificently fit to do. Then there's hundreds kind of in the middle where they could be successful and they would do well at. And then there's about 10 that they should never, ever, ever consider doing because they wouldn't be suited to do them. Now, as
they wouldn't be
grow,
happy.
no, so you ideally want them to wake up to a job that they're happy to do. And the really cool thing about UpGig is that they can actually customize the results. So they can actually like or dislike certain options, so they can always continue to keep this. This is something that they complete and they get to keep, so they can revisit it as they grow older. But to me, when I look at my kids, what it's really offered us is an incredible amount of careers that we had never even heard of, right? So it's kind of nice for a teen to receive this, and even a young adult that might be hesitating and think, oh my goodness, I could be doing all of this and I could be a really important contributor and I could be of service to others. And so I think those are really important tools. And it's all science-based, it's all behavioral, so it's perfectly predictable. And it's also it also offers careers that are very current, and it also informs us on the careers that will stick around for a little longer or the careers that will be relevant in a few years, because as you know, our markets are changing continuously, so it's really valuable information. So I think we've covered
I'm
the
glad
program.
you mentioned that one, because we talked about that. We talked about that in our call the other week, but I didn't actually pinpoint that like as one of the points I thought would be great for our community, and that is actually one of the greatest things. One of the things that I hear a lot on various homeschooling groups is, as well as our own, but just that putting our kids into that higher education, and we want to prepare them before it actually becomes time that they're done their high school years, right? And what better way to prepare them than to really have that assessment of what more in their every part of their brain, right?
Right.
What are those professions that they should gravitate more towards?
Right, and I will add that the program actually allows you to select the number of years that you would like to, that you see yourself being in school. So will it be a college degree? Will it be a university degree? So that also, kind of selects different careers. But again, what I just absolutely love about this program is that every single kid sees them. It allows them to see themselves as having an incredible amount of options. And so I think it's a very positive, empowering tool to give them.
That is wonderful. Well, I thank you very much for joining us today and just sharing all your knowledge. I mean, of course, you're sharing about what you do and you're passionate about in your work, but really you've just given parents a lot of ways to think, and we are really always thinking about different ways we can serve our kids as being their teachers. So thank you so much. And I believe Christine has put your link, so go and check out Veronica's website. Her business is Slater Consulting, and it is really just, she's got a lot of information on there to really help you identify. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, she deals with all ages. So even as an adult and you're looking for a bit of clarity and guidance, even on, it doesn't actually just stop when we're kids, even as adults. Sometimes we need to just understand a little bit more about what's going on inside our head and how we can really just put that out into the world. And Veronica really seems to just have all the different services that can guide you in that right direction. I hope you enjoyed our talk today. Enjoy the wonderful time as spring. I love springtime, and I hope we're having lots of days of thawing all across Canada for everybody here. And you have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Bye.